Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mind Blown Zone, episode 52. This one is called The Pathway to Glorious Self-Governance. I'm here with Brad. How you doing, Brad?
Never better. How about yourself, Matt?
Well, just never better. Enjoying the never better philosophy more day by day.
Good for you, man. It's better than I've been better, isn't it?
I've been better. I say that sometimes, you go to the supermarket, they're like, how are you? And I'm like, well, you know, I've been better.
Hell, a lot
Feels
of
pretty
people
bad.
say it. Yep. Bad
Okie
choice.
dokie. So I'm going to read the bumper script for this. Here we go. They call it democracy, but our founding documents say constitutional republic. And what we've actually got is a kakistocracy, rule by the worst among us, a corporate overlay running a neo feudal system in plain sight. Today, we're laying out where we are, how we got here, and where we're headed. A world where government means servants, not rulers. We're talking voluntary association, natural law, and the real meaning of anarchy, not chaos, but simply no rulers. What happens when enough people rise in consciousness, see the game for what it is, and simply withdraw consent? This podcast is our setup for our upcoming Charter for Servants of the People podcast, our blueprint for self-governance that honors free will. Time to take our power back. I like that one,
Yeah,
Brad.
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Excellent.
Awesome. Yeah, so we got a few sections here that we're going to go through. We got where we are, how we got here, where we want to be, how we get there, and then a surprise at the end. All right. So we're going to start off with where we are. And I think where we are is what we mentioned in the bumper, which is a kakistocracy. Pretty funny sounding word, but it's a real word. Kakistocracy. And it means rule by the worst among us. And it's this funny situation where, these ruling politicians, whether they're puppets or not, is another conversation. But our ruling politicians say that we have our democracy, and they say it in this elegance and nobility as if it's this miraculous thing, this democracy. Even Plato said that democracy is tyranny by the majority. For some reason, people haven't heard that wisdom, even though it was said 2,500 years ago, or 2,300 or 2,400. And
Close
what we've
enough.
really got in this democracy is neo feudalism. Uh, and what we're meant to have, according to the Constitution, is a constitutional republic. But we don't have that, do we? What are your thoughts, Brad?
Not even close. Yeah, no. And the reason I call it neo feudalism is because back in the day, in the feudal era, right, in England in particular, the serfs and the peasants paid their lords, like anywhere from 10 to 20% of their annual wages. And
Sounds familiar.
I think Americans and Australians are paying upwards of 50 to 80% to their lords. They just pretend like they're not lords, but they really are.
Yep.
So yeah, that's neo feudalism, and that's being brought to us by a group of people who don't like us very much and want to hold us in tyranny. Pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah. We were talking before about how people kind of don't notice that it's strange. Did you want to say something on that, Brad? How like people just take it for, oh yeah, that's how government and society works, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just everybody adapts to their environment. So you grow up thinking this is the way it is, and then this is the way it is, and you can't unless someone presents something like we're going to attempt to present here. The thought of it being different doesn't even register. It's just like this is how it is, and once you get acclimated to that, seeing through it is incredibly difficult, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the plan. I've run this stuff by people, hundreds of different people over the years, and they all look at you like, well, yeah, I mean, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and it's a good idea, but that's impossible because this is the way it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's not the way it is. It's like this, and there's no way to get like this to over to like that. So that's kind of the impetus for us doing these podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, generally people view the way it is as causative of the next moment in time, right? So the way it
Right.
is just is it, don't things have to stay the way they are because of how they are?
That's
Anyway,
exactly right. They got a
so
bad case of what is itis.
yeah, I've had that. I still got some of it, I'd say.
Yeah,
So
we all do.
I think we, get brought up and we believe that we're living in this like miraculous achievement called civilization. That there used to not be civilization. People were uncivilized, and now we're civilized thanks to civilization. Right? It's this wonderful kind of thing. I mean, if you've read Brave New World, have you read Brave New World, Brett?
Oh, sure. Sure,
I
sure.
mean, it was a long time ago for me. It was like 23 years ago, but I recall that I believe his name was John. He was the uncivilized savage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all the people in the miraculous civilization, they were like immoral. And John, I believe, was the only one that had, a, let's say, romantic or hero oriented morality. Do you recall that?
Right. Yeah, oh yeah. He wasn't brainwashed.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, it was free folk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really what this civilization thing that we're living in is that we're being controlled by civil law. Like that's really what it is, right? Like we have law. We have not law, we have legal system, right? We have legal system policies and it's written in papers and we have to follow rules. And I mean that's really what civilization is. Like it's made civil, right? Like you have to look at that word like civil. Like we think of civil to mean like, oh, let's all be civil here, right? Let's be good to each other. But that's not really etymologically what civil means, is it? Isn't civil like according to the policies of the civic? Like there's a word like civics, isn't it? What does that word precisely mean? Do you know, Brett?
Well, it's a Roman word, right? And that's the whole etymology of it. Is that and the way it's been sold to people around the world for hundreds of years is there was civilization and then there were the barbarians and
Mm-hmm.
or savages, depending on which history book you're reading and which era it is. But yeah, that what the Romans figured out, right, was that the conquest, the war and conquest was so taxing on their soldiers in the Roman Empire, and it was extremely difficult to go into this Germanic region, right, and wipe out all the men, and then the women and the children and the weak men were left over, and they were so hard to govern, right, because they didn't have a set of rules to give them to follow, and this was as they started to develop these rules, Justinian, this is later that they started to develop these rules, and this was after the Vatican and the Council of Nicaea. They figured out over the course of about 500 years that the way to rule people isn't to kill them with swords; it's to rule over them with rules and basically institutional dogma, and that's where civil comes from.
Right.
Long explanation, but yeah,
And just to add, like I looked it up, and civic means like over pertaining to a city, right? So you got free folk out in the wild, but then you let them self corral or corral them yourself and put them into a city. And what's the idea of a city? It's where you got a big list of rules, right, for people to follow. So that's kind of where we're at. We're in this big civilization, and there's just civilization everywhere, and there's just rules and rules and rules put by our rulers, and they tell us what to do, and we have to do what they say, or we're in trouble. Wow, yay!
that's
What an
right.
achievement!
Right. That's basically the history of the world everywhere for thousands of years, except for about 80 years in the United States. You just described.
Right. So what we've got here is that in this civilized kakistocracy, violations of free will are normal. Right. So we did a podcast a while back. It was called Axioms of Natural Law. Really good. One of our best, I would say, like where we really talk about like how natural law works. I mean, natural law is just one of these concepts that you want to have a good grasp on. And one of the things was like violating a violation of free will. That's what wrongdoing is. Like if you violate someone else's free will, that's the very thing that you can't do without receiving a karmic punishment. But now we just live in that by default. What do you reckon, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, it's happening constantly and all the time, right? And it's the root source of all humanity's problems is that people feel like their free will has been violated, even if they accept the system, right? They accept this civil empire. It's still in that acceptance. They're walking around all day unhappy or sad because in some way or shape or form their free will has been violated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yep.
it's like happening all the time, and most people aren't even aware of it.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see this trend going, Brad?
Trend?
Well, what do you think's the final form of this civilized kakistocracy of free will violation?
Well, I mean, if it was going to go the way of the rulers, then it obviously it ends in kingdom, empire, dictatorship type scenario, right? You got a king, you got an emperor, you got a dictator. That's how it's been set up to work, and that's how it's worked for thousands of years. And even though we don't have one in America or Australia, right? We really do have an emperor. We just don't know his name. Right? He's just in the background, right? He hires a bunch of guys to play the role of president and prime minister and congressman and all these other things, but they're just taking orders from the emperors. So that's what we're in, and I'm pretty confident that we're moving out of that. And the more people that realize we can move out of it is the whole reason, right? We're doing this type of podcast. Yeah,
Right on. Shall we move on to how we got here?
absolutely.
All right. How we arrived in our civilized kakistocracy. Now, I'm going to let Brad give us a history lesson here. So lay it on us, Brad.
Well, this is really simple. I mean, and these are obviously the French, Latin. The name for a natural government that a natural body of people that are operate the country, right, is called de jure. I mean, it means that it's there by will of the people. So that would be a de jure government. So our constitutional republic is our de jure government. But then there's the term de facto, right? De facto, right? And that is by force. Is a de facto government is in place by force. So like if there's a coup, for example, right, in a country, and there was a coup in America, they just the people who pulled the coup just didn't call it that in our history books. But like say in an African country, right, there's a coup in Nigeria or whatever, then that interim government, right, is the de facto government. They're holding everybody by force and making people do what they say. And that's the definition of de facto, by force, basically. So what America has had since the Civil War has been a de facto corporate overlay government known as the federal government. With me?
I'm with you.
So that's what happened. And what they call the Reconstruction of the South, it's they give it away, they make it obvious. So that's a big term. Is that during 1865 to 1890 or whatever, they call it Reconstruction, and the way they imply that in our history books is that the South, these bad upstarts that were trying to start a fight, right? They had to reconstruct the mentality of the Southerners because they were just barbarians, basically. But what was really happening was they were reconstructing our government into this de facto system that we now all think is normal today. Yeah,
Seems that way to me.
that's what happened. And like I said, well, so it's like slow boiling a frog, right? It was very slow, right? The person who captured it, most brilliant American to ever live, I think, Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, wrote a book in 1871. He called it The Gilded Age, and gilded, GIL, meaning like there's a cheap veneer, like a gold, like if you were trying to hawk gold coins that were really tungsten, right? Cheap garbage metal in the middle, but you'd put a little thin layer of gold around it to trick people. But really the whole coin was really tungsten, and that's what gilded means. It's like a cheap veneer overlay. And he saw it in 1871 that that's what was happening post Civil War, and he was exactly right. And so that's all our current de facto kakistocracy is a fake government that has nothing, bears no resemblance to our founding documents. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how about what if you mentioned something on this like I imagine that like for example in Australia, like this whole government thing seems really natural to people, as I'm sure it does in America probably too. But I imagine most people feel like that, like in America, right? You got this like thing, this story where there was like a coup and stuff like that. But in Australia, it's like we got together in 1901 and talked about having a federal government, and we had a vote, and then we had the federal government, and it was voted in, and it was the first prime minister of the country, and it was a very proud moment for Australia. And since then, we've had this wonderful voting system. So it really feels natural, feels normal, like as if it's some uh, objectively just elected government. And I imagine like a lot of countries feel like that. Do you want to just comment on that sentiment?
Well, yeah, and I'm going to make an interesting comment here. I've never said this before, but I'll mention it here. So yeah, and see, this is the idea, right? The underlying sentiment that you're talking about is that there's somebody else, right, that you can hand off the duties and responsibilities of getting people who don't act the way you want them to act the way you want them to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're saying all my problems or this city's problems or this country's problems are because of those people. And if I can just elect the right people, right, to deal with those bad guys that are ruining everything for us, then I'll be happy. Right? That's the sentiment behind this idea. It's totally giving your power away, and in
Mm-hmm.
reality, it's giving away powers that you don't have to someone who doesn't have them either, and they just pretend like they have them. Hopefully, that made a little bit of sense. Did you follow that?
Oh yeah,
So
makes
like
a lot of sense.
right, like do you have the power? Right? Do you have the right to kill another person? If you don't decide you don't like that person, right? Did someone say this is your right, Matt? You're allowed to kill that guy. I'm not talking about self-defense. I'm just like you saying, all right, here's the guy. I don't like him. I want to kill him. You have that power. You don't,
Obviously not.
and that means that you can't vote for someone. You can't give someone else a power that you don't have. Right? So you can't vote for a president who has the power to kill people, go to war, blah blah blah. Right. So that's kind of the essential, the most egregious example of it. But this is what's going on all the time. You have the power to throw a guy in jail if you don't like, something your neighbor because you don't like the color he, painted his house. Right? You don't have that power, but you vote for people. You think you're voting for people that do have those types of powers to throw people in jail for smoking weed or whatever. Right? So there's that bit of confusion, and we're all wrong because we think we're giving powers to this government, and they're just doing what we've been brainwashed into believing they should be doing. So this was the interesting comment I was going to make. Anna von Reitz, the woman who's a big lawful patriotic guru out there, she's been out there for 30, 40 years, and she sends letters to high-ranking officials all over the world, and she actually got a letter back from the Pope years and years ago. I don't know when it was, 10 years ago maybe. And she was saying, like, this is tyranny and you don't have the right to do this. Da, 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 da. And the Pope just, there was like this one sentence thing. It was like, well, yeah, but you voted for him. So if you don't like him, vote him out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, your choices are really the same choice, right? You're just saying, I want these people with this political persuasion to be the ones that get to do the killing and the imprisoning and the taxing instead of those guys doing the imprisoning, the killing, and the taxing. Right? So the this is where the whole uniparty idea comes up, right? Whether I don't know what the parties are in Australia, but Democrat and Republican here, right? It's like it's the same beast no matter which one you vote in. Nothing changes. Yeah?
Oh yeah. And in Australia, it's even more obvious. I mean, the differences between the parties are basically nothing. But if I can not so much go deeper, but just kind of echo what you're saying and just add a slightly different vibe to it. It's like if you look back at the history in with that idea, that people got the idea that hey, I can vote for people to do bad stuff and I don't have to do it. It almost seems like the point where a government managed to get introduced, where it was the point where they brainwashed enough people to believe that by being the majority and voting for something, voting for some other group of people to implement all the policies that they want implemented, like that's where the switch happens. And
That's right.
it just continues and continues because every few years, like there's an election, but people show up and vote. I certainly don't vote. Voting is not voting is absolutely illegal in Australia, but I don't vote. But still, everyone rocks up and they vote because the government says we're going to issue controls and policies over this particular stuff. And people are like, yeah, that's what I want. All right. So the responsibility is not just that some bad people over there did some stuff, it's that we gave power away to them and said, do bad stuff on my behalf.
Right. Right. And they have us believing that we need them, right? But that's it's just basically cascading outsourcing of one's power over
Mm-hmm.
centuries, decades, centuries, millennia, gets us into this spot. So that's why it's so hard to talk about this, is because everybody is under the impression that this is what we need.
Right.
And it is not. It's just making things worse. It always has, always will, because of
Yep.
violation of free will.
Okay. So we'll probably move on to the next section. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I will just mention that we have a bunch more podcasts that are on this topic. Just go to our website, The Mind Blown Zone, and just scroll through it. You'll see a bunch related to concepts like legal overlay. All right. We actually have 4 podcasts in the first 10 podcasts that we did. They're all about the legal system, history of it, and just how it works. Right. And we got a bunch more cool ones. Like I said, the axioms of natural law one. Yeah. Cool ones like that. Okay. So the next one. Where we want to be as a society, glorious self-governance. So when we say self-governance, we are talking about anarchy. Now, when people hear anarchy, for example, when my 80-year-old auntie hears anarchy, she's like, but that would be chaos. Like, what do you mean it would be chaos? Like, why would it be chaos? Why would anarchy be chaos? And there's some sort of automatic assumption that if you don't have rulers, then you have chaos. What do you think that's about, Brad?
Uh, per, ingenious propaganda and brainwashing. It's precisely how we got there.
Right. So what we would suggest is that try to imagine anarchy, but don't imagine chaos. Imagine that people abide by the axioms of natural law. If you haven't watched that podcast, feel free to go watch it, then come back and imagine it. However, if I can just tell you one particular axiom, it's violating another's free will is wrongdoing. Okay, so imagine anarchy, no rulers, but nobody is violating anybody else. Okay, does that sound like chaos? Sound like chaos
Of
to you,
course
Brad?
not. Of course not. And that's the golden rule, basically. And societies and tribes and collections of people have always totally been able to manage and deal with people who do. Right? You can never prevent it from happening. But everyone is smart enough to know, yeah, this person can't be a member of society anymore or can't interact with society because of they keep violating people's free will. So it's not like we need a federal national police force to handle something that anybody with common sense could handle, right?
Mm-hmm. So we're going to go into what this self-governance looks like in a moment. We just want to mention this quickly. See, if you look up the definition of anarchy, if you look it up in Webster's Dictionary 1828, which is generally the most objective, best dictionary in the world, you get want of government, a state of society where there is no law or supreme power, or when the laws are not efficient and individuals do what they please with impunity, political confusion. I mean, why is there negativity, like that is not an objective definition at all. That is like the assumption of negativity baked into it. Yeah? Like what, why is
Yeah,
that
it's
there?
got hijacked.
Yeah. So
It's
even 200 years ago, this idea was totally, it was even propagandized into one of the most objective, honest men in history. Noel Webster, I believe his name was. Noel? Is that his name?
Noah.
Noah.
The word is from Latin, right? Archy is rulership, and an is no or nothing, right? So anarchy, no rulers. It's very simple
Yep.
what it means. Yeah, that's 30 words of gobbledygook as far as I'm concerned from Noah.
Right. Do better, Noah. In the third edition, I want better. Okay, so now let's get into a bit how this proper anarchy, proper self governance, glorious self governance would work. Uh, Brad, you introduced this word voluntarism. How about you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's these realms of people cross paths, and so there's the anarchists, and there's the anarcho capitalists, and the voluntarists, and they're all, if you did like a Venn diagram, right? They're all generally mostly in agreement on most things, right? So they have crossover between them. But a voluntarist, it's not a voluntarist. It's a weird word, voluntarist. I mean, the philosophy is just basically no man or woman can compel another man or woman to do anything they don't want to do or not do something that they do want to do as long as they're not causing anybody else any harm. That's basically voluntarism.
Yeah. And I am such a voluntarist that I even have like a conflict over sending out, like emails to people who didn't request it. I'm like, but is it right? Is it moral to send it out? Like shouldn't they have to volunteer to receive the email?
Right. Yeah, and you can come up with a million different fine lines. Well, what about this and what about that? Sure, that's all you can debate it, but as long as that's the guiding principle, right? That there's no one person or group of people that are above the other people that can tell them what to do, you're on the right path.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's bring this voluntarism idea into what we talk about next, which is like, how does it actually work, right? Let's say we got the United States. Just it could be any country, but most people most familiar with the United States. How would it look like, Brad? Give us an idea.
Well, yeah. So if enough people were to see through the deceptive de facto federal kakistocratic government, right? What would start to happen would be what was happening pre-Civil War. And it seems like a bad word because of what happened in Europe and Sarajevo, and the Balkanization is the word, but it's an accurate definition of the way things would shape up. And really, it would be if we were to go back to what our constitutional republic was supposed to be about, right? Is it would kind of people would kind of congeal or come together in counties. Call it a territory. I'm not sure if you have counties in Australia, but just it's typically a county is 3, 4, 5 cities or townships that are encompassed within the general county. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And of course, the county in America, anyway, has a sheriff, literally the only duly elected by the people law enforcement officer is the sheriff, and of course his deputies and so forth. But he's accountable to the people for basically keeping the peace, right? And no one, nobody, there's nobody above the sheriff, right? The state governor can't come in with the state troopers, or the FBI can't come in. And this is actually happening in a few counties in America today. Sheriffs who actually know what the Constitution says and what the real laws are know this, and the state and the FBI leave them alone. And it's within that balkanized county or community that the sheriff basically upholds the will of the people that live in the county. You with me?
Oh yeah.
So I always use the gun idea. I mean, it can be a million different ideas, but we've seen it all in Hollywood movies. You know, the sheriff decides that you can't carry guns in town anymore. You can't walk into the saloon on your hip, and that's the new rule, right? The people are tired of the gunslingers shooting everybody up, and so they say no more guns in town. And so that would be an example of a county that said this is the way we're going to operate going forward. And for the gunslingers, right, they're technically their correct choices was to move to a county where you can't carry guns in town in the saloons and so forth. So in other words, I don't have to pick up and leave my country of whatever 70 zillion square acres, right? In other words, the whole country isn't made this way, but in this particular county, it is made this way. And so in the next county over, they do allow guns. So you would move yourself over to that county. And of course, this would happen. Christians, I mean, it's happened in America, Utah, the northwest corner of Utah is all Mormons now. And so it has happened. And there is a certain amount of balkanization in the United States, but it's the end of this uniform. Everybody's got to do it the way this guy in Washington, D.C. says. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, imagine this like Biden or Trump just issues an executive order, and now you just made up the rule for a whole country,
Yeah.
350 million people, and you just decided that it would be that way for everybody. You don't even know
Right.
them.
A mass violation of free will, right? Like some of the people are going to go along with it, and maybe, right? Maybe the majority are down with the rule, right? So, but there's still tens of millions of people that aren't down with it, and so you've just violated their free will, and so
Right,
they're
right, right.
angry. So
Right.
that's the idea.
So basically, you've got this very natural sorting and arrangement of people and their preferences into areas of various size and population, and they have different rules in this locale, right? And sometimes you got a rule where it's the same spanning many counties in a row, like in a row. I mean connected, right? And sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
don't, all right? But it's hard to you wouldn't be able to just perfectly imagine yourself how it would actually turn out. But people just very kind of like naturally start to sort themselves out, and you find that there's this rule here and that rule there, and everybody's just really happy, right? like like everybody kind of just winds up in a society where things function how they want it to function, and they just get along with like-minded individuals, and it's great. And we don't need to have any bureaucrat or controlling politician from the diabolical beta narcissist hierarchy bossing everybody around and telling people what they can and can't do, because
Right.
there's no need for that, because people just live where things work how they want, and it's great.
That's right. So the system as it is today is very deliberate, and its purpose is to make people feel unhappy.
Right.
That's why it is the way it is. Right? Like
Yeah.
the income tax, right? Income tax, 100% unlawful, 100% legal. And if you're not aware that you've been tricked into admitting you're in a fraudulent legal jurisdiction, then you have to pay them. And
Right.
nobody likes to pay income taxes, even if they say they do. So that's just a great example. And you can
It's
see that kind of, by the way, that balkanization does happen in the United States today in terms of state, county, and local taxes,
mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
Texas
Yeah.
and Florida have no state taxes, right?
Yeah.
And California could yank you up to 20%, which is unbelievable. Anyway,
Right. Okay. So I think we can venture into like how things work at a servants and administrative way. Obviously, we're as we said in the bumper script, this is a setup for our podcast charter for servants of the people. It's going to be a really cool podcast. Look forward to that one. Basically, it's like we're going to lay out, here's the instructions for people who want to be servants, public servants, right? Here's how you're meant to operate. Um, but we actually started working on that one first, and then we were like, whoa, This is pretty big. Why don't we step back and work on the pathway there before we actually lay it all out, and then we even step back further and we're like, well, let's put an interstitial one in between these two. So there's a lot to put forward before we land this plane. Okay, but let's get into how things work on a nationwide level. So things that kind of like are in common to every single person in the whole country are military, uh, the countrywide currency or money if it's what's being used, and post office and email and communication and things like that. You think it's those are the three main ones, Brett, or is there any more you would mention?
Well, yeah, those were the biggies, and those were the biggies 250 years ago, and they're still the biggies. Military would probably be better said like defense. Like cybersecurity is certainly a massive part of defense nowadays that people may confuse with military. But yeah, these are the things, right, that can't be managed, shouldn't be managed by an independent individual state. Right, like in America, you can't let Virginia run the post office for New York. Right, they're gonna deliver all the mail on time in Virginia, and maybe they'll get to New York whenever they get a chance. Right, and
Right.
that was the biggest problem that in colonial America, right before the Declaration and the Constitution and so forth, all the different independent states were making their own money, currency. Right, and they called it scrip. Colonial script. So each state was basically printing money out of thin air. And of course, it all would go bad and they'd counterfeit it. And it was just a gigantic mess. So there needed to be this one place that issued the money for all the states. And so that was the biggest and most important thing to handle. And then, of course, back then, the post office was a lot more important in terms of delivering things to and fro. It's a lot of independent FedEx and UPS handle that stuff now, but there still needs to be this agency that officially, like certified mail and registered mail and so forth, that like officially handles the delivery of things on behalf of the states and the government and so forth. So those were kind of and still are kind of the three big things.
Yeah. And there could be more, and you just arrive at what they are, and by reason. Like, for example, you arrive at military by reason. I was just thinking while Brad was talking, what's that state right in the middle? Is it like Kansas? Is that Kansas in the middle, right in the middle?
Yeah, yeah, that's one of them. Yeah,
Yeah, like
absolutely.
you couldn't, if you had all the states individually running their military, then Kansas would be like, yeah, you guys, yeah, we're not going to be involved in that. You got a sea to land invasion coming from either side, and Kansas is like, it's you guys handle it.
Right,
Right, so
right.
that's a federal interest. Sorry, I don't mean to say federal. I mean countrywide or nationwide interest.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, back in those days, obviously the British had ruled the seas. So if you were a coastal state, you were most interested in border protection. Right,
Mm.
inland state didn't care that much.
Okay, so let's take a look at state and local. So how does it work when you get down more refined? I guess we already kind of discussed that, right? Like this balkanization. Here, it's like here's how we do it around here, right? So you have like sheriff, and you have like a local, you know, majority rule kind of there, right? Is that your imagination for it, Brad? Like there's actually a democratic system at at county sheriff level.
Well, sure, but but the guiding principle, right? So democracy is really not the great word, but the guiding
Mm.
principle is that you can never make up a rule that violates the individual's rights.
Right, right,
Right, so it gets tricky. You say, "Well, I'm an individual and I want to carry my gun into the saloon." Right? That's a controversial idea. Right? You violated my right to carry a gun into the saloon.
mm.
So there are gray areas to it, and that's why it's a rule. And there are tricky situations, but this is the part of humanity coming to terms with each other that will happen as we get into the next section and talk about consciousness. Will evolve out of this. I can't be safe if guys are walking around with guns. Right? That's
Right.
a a base devolved level of consciousness that causes these types of violations of free will to arise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think that covers it for this section. I'll just say, as we say all this, like you've probably got in your head, I would imagine, like a bunch of like, well, what if this? And how's that going to work, right? And that's why, our next podcast is, I think like the idea of the next one is like to answer all the objections. Like, was that what you had in mind, Brad? This transitional era, how would we handle this? How would we handle that? Is that what it's all about?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's more like, well, here's the way it is right now, right?
Mm.
And then here's how it will be when it's right,
Mm-hmm.
and here's how we move through. Right? Here's how we move through from here's how
All
it
the
is
tricky
now to here's
parts.
how it's right.
Yeah.
Right. You
Yeah,
can't.
yeah,
You
yeah.
can't. So, for instance, right, you just couldn't say, all right, we're just shutting down the federal government and everybody that's on Social Security and welfare and student loans and food stamps, you're out of luck. Right.
Mm.
Like that, there would be mass rioting in the streets because over 50% of Americans rely on some form of government handouts.
Right.
Right. So you'd have to say, well, eventually this thing called government, it's going to be a service bureau, 20 years from now or whatever. But in the 20-year span, we're going to honor these, payouts and blah 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 blah. So that's the idea.
Right. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next section. This not as brief as not as comprehensive as the podcast we're about to do, but here's basically how we get there. So I'm going to introduce this. How we arrive at glorious self-governance. All right, Brad. We've written down here that large numbers of people need to be high enough in consciousness to know that glorious self-governance is the way things like ideally are. Yeah.
No,
And
that's a
that's kind of
yeah.
like that's kind of like the number one requirement. Like that's the thing we need to get to. Like if you want to have glorious self-governance, it's not arrived at by here's how we force people into not being forced into anything. It has to be a rise in consciousness. Yeah, that's the key ingredient. Is that the
That's
general
right.
thing we're going for here?
That's right. Yeah, and Matt likes to say natural law, and I like to say universal law, and they're kind of one and the same. But this is the way things are. We're always supposed to be. We weren't supposed to come down here so that other people could boss us around, and that it's such a
Sounds ridiculous.
foreign idea, right? It's such a foreign idea to most people. Most people think we do need someone here to boss people around that we don't like. And it's that flip of understanding that we don't need that excuse me, opens the doors to making this change. Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, one way to look at it is, who do I need to tell me what to do? Is there anyone I'm dependent upon, right, to run my life?
Oh, I've got to have my
And
wife. I wouldn't make it very
we
far without that.
Well, you know what I mean. Like someone to tell you and boss you around, right? Is that what you need? Do you know any
Yeah.
adults who need someone to boss them around? Right?
I'm joking to the fullest extent.
I gotcha. Right. So that you have to see that. I don't need President Trump. I don't I know he's doing a bunch of stuff for the federal government and it's important over here and they're fighting this war and there's some tariff in this and tax, I don't none of that matters to me, really. Right? It doesn't matter to my day to day. And as much as they're trying to make everybody think that it should matter to my day to day and my life, it doesn't. They're making problems where they don't exist to try to justify their existence. And when you finally see it, you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't need this. What's this for? You
Right.
with me a little bit there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So do you want to iterate your three rules? Because I think they're one of the best pieces of guidance we have toward higher consciousness, really.
Yeah. So they're very simple for a good reason, right? One is become aware that you don't need rulers. Just become aware of it, right? Like, what do I really need them for? And you say, well, they got to run the jails and they start the wars. And if you really start to think it through, you don't need them. We don't need them. And once you gain that awareness, right, you start to see through the trick, the brainwashing, right, that we don't really need these rulers. We can all get along just fine. Then you start to spread that awareness. That's rule number 2. Start telling people about it. Start, talking at the, at the water cooler and at your local mahjong game and whatever, right? Start telling people, hey, this is, these guys, this is an interesting idea. We don't really need these rulers. Like, we don't have to vote Republican or Democrat. We just don't have to vote at all. And we don't need them. And once you start to spread the word, right? You tell 5 people, those 5 people tell 5 people, right? It gets around pretty quick, and everyone. This is the third part. Then is that more and more people start to withdraw consent, participation, and belief in this fraudulent de facto kakistocracy, and then it just collapses. You don't need to go fight them. We don't need to go kill everybody over there. We just need to stop participating and believing in what they're selling. That's the idea. Comments?
There's a
Questions?
book. There's a book by Terry Pratchett. I used to read all those Discworld books, and one was called Small Gods. And there was like many gods, right? Many gods of this, gods of that, and the god thrives and becomes more powerful based on how many people believe in them, right? And when people just stop believing in it, it just kind of withers, and I'm not sure if it dies or not, but it just loses all its power. So
Yeah,
it's because we put so much faith and belief and attention into the government that it has so much power.
that's right. Where your attention goes, energy grows. And as long as and look at the television set, right? All the news channels is constantly 24/7 talking about all the really super duper important stuff that they're doing for us and blah, blah, blah. People would just stop watching that stuff, it would vanish.
Mm.
That's the idea. Turn your back on them.
Yeah, the turn your back on them. That's I read that one. That's kind of like Ayn Rand's. Just one of the messages in Atlas Shrugged. Just like turn your back on them. Just stop, you know, incessantly interacting with these people and just like withdraw your attention completely.
All
Like
right. Don't
they
fight
will
them.
just wither.
Right. You don't have to fight them, and you don't have to pick the one that you think is going to be the right one to be our ruler. Those are it's like those are the only choices in most people's minds. But there's another choice. No rulers.
Mm.
That's the one we're advocating for, right?
I know that Justin Trudeau is a complete moron, but one of the things he said was when we fight our enemies, they win. And on the surface, that sounds stupid. And I'm sure he was talking about people who aren't our enemies anyway. But if you fight the government, like you really feed them, right?
That's
Like
right.
you actually give them energy because I don't know how it works, but it seems like the more we get angry and just like yell at the TV and fight and say go to the government and say you people are just so bad, it's like you just like make yourself sick and become weak and they're just like yeah whatever. So it really
Right.
doesn't
Thanks for all
it
your
just
attention.
doesn't do anything. Yeah, thanks for all your attention. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, there's one more comment here. Local responsibility for assisting the needy. Did you just want to mention that one, Brad? Seems like you put that there.
Yeah. I kind of touched on that earlier, but yeah, it's the what do we do with all the people that need help? And it's like any other culture or society that's come before us, right? Is that the local community, the families, everybody pitched in to take care of the people that were in need. And there's
Mm.
absolutely nothing stopping us from doing it now, except that we believe that the federal government's in charge of it all.
Yeah.
And so nobody helps anybody anymore because there's a government program for that guy. And so we
Yeah.
walk past the homeless people and the crazy people and the people with mental difficulties, and we ignore them. We don't try to help anybody because there's allegedly one of our rulers has the power and authority to do that, not me.
Yeah, like you could just stop paying, 30 to 40% or up to 50% of your income on taxation. And then, you could just give 10% of your income if you want, if you so choose to, you know, what am I saying? Like less advantaged, or people who are in a lower financial position than you would like them to be. You can just give some of your money to them, right? But you're still up.
Yeah, you come out ahead. Yeah, it's all inverted. It's all flip flopped. And so,
Right.
right, it's given our power away that has caused the situation that we're in today. And really, very few people help people in need today because they think their tax dollars are going towards the federal government who's going to take care of it all.
What a bag of nonsense.
That it is.
As if those people. No, we don't need to get into it. Okay, so shall we get into the next section?
Sure.
All right. Uh, the consciousness breakthrough required for glorious self governance. All right, Brad. We know people need to rise in consciousness for us to have this wonderful anarchy, but what exactly needs to happen? Like consciousness in what way?
Well, yeah, and so the knock on Hawkins is his whole kinesiology thing and pushing the arms down to prove this, that, and the other. And I could care less about any of that stuff, and frankly, I don't even believe most of it. So that's not important. What's important is that he made a scale, right, from 10 to
Can I,
1,000,
can
a
I just
logarithmic scale.
explain what you're talking about to people?
Oh,
So there was
okay.
his name is Richard Hawkins, right? That's his first name, Richard.
David R.
David.
Hawkins.
David Hawkins, right? So he made a scale for consciousness, right? And it's got numbers from like 1 up to 1,000 or something like that. We've got a whole podcast on it. I think it's around number 14. Just go to themindblowenzone.com. And the way he invented it, what Brad's talking about is he would push on people's arm when he said certain things, and if their arm held, then what he was saying was true, and if it went down, then it's not true. And Brad's saying he doesn't care about that because that seems a bit kooky, but the scale itself is very valuable, right? Just to give some context there. Okay, please continue,
Right.
Brad.
Yeah, that's just the mainstream knock on him. If you go, type into Google search or AI, they're going to say, yeah, all his methods are controversial and there's no real proof because of this kinesiology, arm pushing stuff. And it's like, yeah, whatever. It's not important. He just mapped a logical, obvious scale, right? So on the bottom end of the scale was our worst feelings, right? Shame, guilt, grief, depression, anger, fear, right? And on the top end were, joy, peace, love, bliss, right? So, and everybody has this, we'll call this kind of vibrational set point, this feeling state that they're moving around most of the day in. And that's the number you would get labeled, the number you would get for your state of consciousness. And so before 2005, I believe, David Hawkins said the majority of humans are below the level of 200. And below the level of 200 is the critical thing, and this has helped me understand what happened during COVID, was that people below 200 cannot discern between truth and falsehood. That's his most important bit of information. So if you only know that part, things will start to make a little bit of sense, because there are certain people that you can give them all the facts, proof, and evidence in the world, and it's like you're talking to a brick wall. Right? They're just like, yeah, no, I'm going to believe this other thing because the expert said so.
And if I can add in, like,
everything,
he calls this 200 level courage, and that makes a lot of sense, right? Because like to take on a new idea, to look at things how you never used to look at them before, you need a certain level of courage because you're going to get that cognitive dissonance. So I think it makes sense why that's the level.
yeah, it's the courage to question what you're being told. Right?
Yep.
Like maybe what they're telling us isn't true. And so, yeah, that's, and it's also about, courage to the lower, when you're below 200, you're a victim, right? That's someone to blame. Here's the real problem, right? And when you get to the courage level, you start saying, maybe there's something I can do about this. And maybe I have more to do with this problem in my life than, I originally thought. That's the idea. And so I think Matt kind of pressed me to pick a number here. And I think the numbers that humanity needs to get to. We need to get a majority of Americans to 310, which is, 100 points above the 200 level, into the state of what Hawkins described as willingness. Right? So they have to be willing to really entertain the real reality of this idea of having no rulers. That's when things really start to shift. And I think we're headed that way faster than most people think. And it's not that far away. That the average person will be at least, if not breaching that level, will be approaching it. So people will start to be thinking, maybe this system we've been living under all our lives isn't really good for us. So that's the idea with that bullet. Yeah?
Yeah, let me give just a bit more info on this word willingness. Just a definition that came up. This is from therapyinanutshell.com. Willingness is the quality of being ready or inclined to do something, often involving a positive attitude towards taking action or accepting a situation. Yeah, so it's really getting out of that complacency thing where you're like, well, that's the way it is, right? And to being like, what can I do? I'm ready to do.
Right.
What should I do?
That's right. Takes some inspired action.
Yeah.
In the words of the woo-woo folks, there's actually, there is something I can do about this. I can become aware, spread awareness, withdraw consent, and I can, that's the three basic rules, right? And so that's kind of the level. The 200 to 300 level, you're building up the courage to do it, and you want to do it, and you think you might be able to do it, but you're not quite there yet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, and there's a few things to become aware of as well, like, that happen in that 200 to 310 zone. There's certain things that you become aware of and want to take action to remedy, to be involved in the change, right? So we've written down, become aware of the dangers of centralized power and be against it, right? COVID, big tech. I mean, you can see that the consciousness level related to these things by the masses is, they told me to get the jab, so I did. Because if I didn't, I'd be, the herd would think I was a bad person. And like big tech, it's like, yeah, we all use Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, right? Like that's what we do. Yeah, we all use these platforms that are supplied by them, right? People are not motivated yet to say, let's stop using these things, right? So it's about becoming aware that certain things are not good and being like, okay, I actually want to change this, not just sit there and be like, oh, it's like, you might first become aware that it's not good, but then you might be complacent and be like, well, what are you going to do, right? But that next level where you're actually willing to change it, that's where the magic's going to happen.
Right. It's just getting out of that habit of letting experts and authorities tell you what to do and what the truth is. That's the bad habit.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all been tremendously programmed to do that. And the 310 level, I think, is where we break that spell.
Mm-hmm. Another one on the way there is become aware that the violation of free will is the source of human problems, right? I think that's not so obvious, right? It's like, usually it's people can be like, oh yeah, that group of people, they're the source of human problems. And they might, perceive that they're not doing the right thing. But to get right down to that point where you're like, oh, it's the violation of free will. That's exactly what it is. That's wrongdoing. That's the thing not to do. It's pretty important to find that in your morality. Like, what's right and wrong? Like, and you finally get there, and you're doing the wrong thing if you're violating someone's free will. That's really important mark to get to.
That's right. Making people pay income taxes and go to war is the ultimate violation of free will, right?
Right.
Who's doing that to us? Oh, it's the government, our benevolent rulers. So you can't pick more obvious examples than taxes and wars.
Do you want to take this one, Brad? Comprehending answers, etc.
Well, this is objections, right? So a lot of people are thinking, like we've touched on very briefly here, and it'll be part of the transitional era and the charter, how do we handle crime, right? Well, if anarchy means that the criminals are just going to run loose and kill everybody. That's everybody's almost instant reaction to hearing the idea of no government, right, or no rulers. So we'll address that in the upcoming podcasts. Nothing could be further from the truth, of course, but that's what people knee jerk react to this type of an idea. And the other one, of course, is entitlements, which I also touched on briefly: Social Security and welfare and Medicare and Medicaid, right? All these government handouts that are they're been given to the people. They aren't really being given, but that's the belief system and the idea that if we get rid of government, then we lose all of this welfare, then it'll be instant chaos. And of course, nobody in their right mind would say, "Yeah, let's just get rid of it all and let dog eat dog, and may the strongest survive." Right? That's not the idea behind this at all. So there's a pathway to get there,
Mm.
and the
Yeah,
same
and I
with
guess
military
we'll
protection.
mention our Take Your Power Back course here. Like, Take Your Power Back is, the purpose of it is to raise consciousness, right? Would you say that, Brad? Like, you could say the purpose is to help you be in bliss, or, something more specific like that, or, reclaim intellectual sovereignty. But, like, ultimately, like, the course is aimed in many different ways at raising your consciousness. You reckon that's about right, Brad? That's the primary
That's right on
objective
the
of the
money.
course? Yeah.
Yeah. And raising your consciousness means feeling better, and feeling better means raising your consciousness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, you can frame it in 5 different ways, but that's it. When you feel better, your consciousness is higher. When your consciousness is higher, you feel better, right? And so it's like a launching pad to get you feeling better and better and better, which means your consciousness is rising. That's the top of Hawkins' scale. Is 1,000 is bliss, right? Like, what feels better than permanent bliss? So that's the idea.
I think, I was talking to an AI, probably ChatGPT, back in the day when we made Take Your Power Back, and I was showing him all the concepts in it. And I asked him, like, what level of consciousness does this take you to? And I think it was about 600.
Yeah, I mean,
Pretty
you can
cool.
get there if you follow the path that's laid out. Yeah, I think it's funny. I have quite a few people that I work with, and the one thing nobody wants to do is meditate, and it's the one thing that it speeds up your trip into that state faster than anything else. And of course, that's part of Take Your Power Back. But
Yeah, we got a few
it's
meditation sessions in there.
yeah, it's like if and breathing, right? Conscious breathing and heart based awareness, right? There, I kind of lump them all together. But this is the thing. The biggest challenge people have is they want to know how do I fix? How do I achieve? How? And the idea is you don't need to know how. It's none of your business to know how. It's your business to relax. And the more you can get into this relaxed state, which is meditation, conscious breathing, et cetera, right? The more that trickles into your life, and it takes the edge off of all the problems in your life. And same thing could be happening, right? That's driving you nuts today, and a good couple of months of meditation and conscious awareness and breathing, and that same exact thing would happen to you 4 months later, and it's like water off a duck's back. You don't even notice it. It's like, yeah,
Yep.
that person did that stupid, annoying thing that I used to hate. And today, it's like no big deal. And when it's no big deal, guess what happens? It doesn't happen anymore when you're no longer attached to it and hate it and fight it and try to beat it down and fix it and everything, right? That's giving to your attention to the problem, which makes it bigger in your life. Anyway, I'm rambling.
That's okay.
Yeah?
So I'll just mention a few podcasts that are like consciousness raising. I'm just going to scroll through them and just mention, just so people can be like, what should I listen to next, right? I would say Tell a New Story. All right, tell a new story for your life.
Mm-hmm.
How We Fix the World. What is the Matrix? Normal versus Natural. Judgment. Objectivity. Victim Mentality. Yeah, I'd say those are the best ones for like consciousness raising. And then also you should go to www.themindblownzone.com/courses, or just go to our website and click courses, and there's the big Take Your Power Back manifesto, right? So it's this big manifesto on yeah, just it's a special thing. I'm not even going to say what it is, but you should watch it. Anyone watching should watch that video. We made it back just in the 2023. just when like people were waking up about what's going on with this COVID thing. So it's got that flavor, but it's really great.
Excellent.
So that's
Yeah.
probably it for
Don't
this
forget
one.
blind trust and authority.
Blind trust and authority. That's a good one.
That mirrors what we talked about today. But yeah, I forced Matt to make that basically our first podcast after the after our introduction, because that's the thing, right? That basically prevents seeing a lot of the things we're talking about.
Yep. Okie dokie. So hope y'all look. I just did that southerner thing. Hope y'all look forward. Don't look back. Look forward to the upcoming podcast, the transitional era, and the charter for servants of the people. Those are going to be some great ones. All right. Anything you want to add, Brad?
Yeah. No, that's it. Looking forward to everyone keeping along with the series. And that's all I got. Appreciate everybody listening. We'll catch you
Yep.
on the next one.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks, Matt.